Welcome to CBC Windsor News at 6. I'm Meg Roberts. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us tonight. CBC Windsor is looking at security incidents around Windsor's first and only drug consumption site. The location is slated to shut down next month. Plus, politicians in Ottawa continue debating foreign workers hired to help with installation of Windsor's electric battery plant, and a new program at the University of Windsor is hoping to inspire the next generation of female hockey players. More on that tonight. Windsor's first and only drug consumption and treatment site will shut down in about a month. That's because the application for Safe Point and funding for it are tied up in a province-wide review. That review will inspect the safety of these sites after an incident in Toronto. The CBC's Jennifer LaGrassa looks at security incidents around the location in Windsor.
It's in the name, Safe Point. But since opening in April, how safe has it really been?
They're extremely low, minimal safety and security incidents on site.
The health unit says it's called emergency services twice between April and October. One was to police for them to dispose of a drug that had been found near the site, and another was for a person who had overdosed in Safe Point, but was revived and didn't want to go to hospital.
We've stayed true to the commitment to provide a secure, safe, well-lit space that is in addition to the neighborhood.
Some businesses in the area say they haven't had any issues, but they'd still prefer Safe Point be located somewhere else.
When it opened up, we had concerns about what it was going to bring, and was it going to add to the problem. I have to say, for the time they've been opened, personally here, I've never had an issue.
I haven't seen anything dangerous myself here. Even though I'm against the Safe and Sanctuary site, my biggest fear was what's going to happen if something goes wrong outside and an innocent bystander will be the victim. And this is what happened in Toronto.
The provincial government is reviewing all drug consumption and treatment sites in the province after a woman was shot and killed near a site in Toronto this summer. As part of this, the government has decided to pause applications for new sites. Safe Point was pending approval, which would come with funding. Last week, it said it couldn't continue to operate without that. One advocate says these sites are safe.
And overall, the evidence shows that they do not increase crime. Now, there is a link between drug use and criminality in some sense, because we have prohibited it and we've criminalized it and we've put the market in the hands of gangs and cartels.
Despite launching in August, there's still no timeline as to when the province's review will be complete or any clarity on whether Safe Point will be able to reopen. And if so, where? Because a committee had been searching for a new location. Jennifer LaGrassa, CBC News, Windsor.
Jobs at Windsor's electric vehicle battery plant once again became fodder for political debate in Ottawa today. Federal party leaders battled during question period over the hundreds of South Korean technicians who will be installing equipment at the site. The Conservatives say that work should be done by Canadians. They're demanding that the Liberal government make public all details of the deal for the plant. Nexstar Energy is the result of a partnership between Stellantis and South Korea's LG Energy Solution. The project will benefit from $15 billion in tax breaks. The foreign workers have specialized training to install the new equipment. Wednesday's confrontation on Parliament Hill led the House Speaker calling for order.
The company said that there are 900. And yesterday, his Minister of Employment said he's going to do an investigation and get to the bottom of it.
Once again, we see the extent to which the Leader of the Opposition will go to explain why he stands against investments that are going to create tens of thousands of great jobs across Windsor, across St. Thomas.
We will sign contracts that ensure that Canadian tax dollars only ever go to Canadian workers. What in this $15 billion contract is the Prime Minister so determined to hide?
It's obvious obvious that the Conservative leader is yet again looking for a slogan to justify his ideological opposition to investing in Canadians' futures. He is opposed to investments that strengthen the future of our communities because he doesn't believe in climate change. In terms of jobs, 2,300 local Canadian construction jobs, 2,500 permanent Canadian jobs just for the Stellantis investment.
An Amherstburg man has been charged with assault in connection to a road rage incident. On Monday, officers were called to the 400 block of Alma Street. When they arrived, they found a 63-year-old man suffering from injuries to his face. Police say the victim and the 36-year-old suspect were involved in a road rage incident. The man then followed the victim to a business on Alma Street where he reportedly assaulted him. Following the attack, the suspect fled the scene. Due to video surveillance in the area, police were able to identify the suspect and his vehicle. The suspect was arrested and charged with assault causing bodily harm. Students at Vincent Massey Secondary School staged a walkout this afternoon to hold a rally in support of Palestinians.
Free, free Gaza! Free, free Gaza!
Roughly 70 students participated in the walkout. The march began at the school's front entrance and ended at the intersection of Currie Avenue and Grand Maris Road West. Organizers declined an interview but said throughout the march that they wanted a permanent ceasefire and independence for the Palestinian territories. You may have noticed the ship that was stuck on the American side of the Detroit River is still sitting in the middle of the waterway. The ship is still undergoing an inspection, which could take days. That information, according to Windsor's harbor master, who also says the freighter has to be 100% safe before making its way across the Atlantic Ocean, and any repairs, even unrelated to the ship getting stuck, will have to be fixed before the United States Coast Guard will release it. Bringing hockey home, that's a new University of Windsor women's hockey team program that aims at growing the game for female players in communities across Canada. Young Windsor-Essex players were invited to join the Lancers Players Club, which allowed them the opportunity to train with the team's coaches and players. We checked out the final session this week.
I think the game is always needing more support to grow. Obviously, with the new pro league starting, we need the interest. We need people to know that it's there. We need more and more people playing it. We need more and more people putting their daughters into it. And so I think anything we can do to create exposure to the game, a positive, again, build that network around the game is going to be impactful. And so I think this was just kind of one drop in the bucket of, hey, there's a great game out there. Let's get more people playing it. Let's get more people who are playing it connected to each other, and let's all work collaboratively to make this great thing happen in the future.
I started playing hockey in Tecumseh with the boys. I started when I was 7. I was the only girl on an all-boys team for 6 years. In some ways, they tried to isolate me from the rest at some points. Like, they would make jokes, obviously, like, oh, it's a joke that your name was on a roster. Like, the thing was hacked, but we were little kids. Like, it wasn't actually harmful. But still to see that, just because the difference, like, being a girl can make out on the ice and how people view that, it's really shocking, and it's almost disheartening that people view things that way, or that it's like taught to kids that that's something that you should point out. And I think that it's come a long way. Like, there's a lot more girls playing now than there was then, and I think it's really amazing to see the growth in women's hockey over the past 10 years.
I think it was a great way to facilitate our program in with other programs across the nation, and it was able to give back to hockey. That was something that I didn't think I would. When you go through recruiting at a young age, you think, oh, I have to stay central. Like, for me, I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to go to UBC or stay somewhere that can see me play. It's really cool experiencing knowing that there's people looking at you and you have opportunities worldwide, and that you're able to inspire the next generation to do what you did. So I think being able to provide this opportunity to them and showing them what's out there is something super important, and to encourage the game of hockey and female hockey all around the province and world.
A new deadlier strain of Mpox, formerly known as monkeypox, is circulating. Research suggests it's spread through sexual contact. Big cities like Vancouver and Toronto held vaccine campaigns this past summer, but some of the places seeing the highest number of cases from this new strain don't have access to the shots. CBC's Lauren Pelly explains.
Well, last year's unprecedented Mpox outbreak may have died down, but cases are still appearing in dozens of countries around the world. And in the Democratic Republic of Congo, there's a particularly grim situation right now. The country's largest reported outbreak to date, with roughly 12,000 suspected cases and nearly 600 deaths this year alone. That's the highest number of annual cases the country has ever seen, and they're popping up in new regions that haven't previously had any types of outbreaks. The strain in the DRC is more severe than the one that exploded globally last year. It's thought to be more deadly, killing up to 10% of those who are infected. The World Health Organization says this outbreak is also the first time where this deadlier strain has been linked to sexual transmission. Anyone who followed last year's outbreak will remember that that outbreak spread globally, this milder strain, through sexual networks. But this is the first time this deadlier strain has been seen to spread sexually as well. This has researchers on high alert, and it was actually Canadians who helped do this work on the ground in the DRC to identify a cluster of infections linked to sexual transmission.
The 2022 calendar year, there was transmission of Mpox among the men who have sex with men community. And prior to that, there was no reported cases of Mpox among the MSM community in that country. It very likely happened, it just hadn't been reported.
But there's no cause for panic. There's no sign right now that this is spreading widely. It seems to be contained within an outbreak in the DRC, but researchers still do want to know more about how this virus transmits. How often is this deadlier strain able to spread sexually? There's still a lot of unknown details about how Mpox operates. I spoke to a researcher in Nigeria who's working with another Canadian team trying to answer some of those questions by gathering samples from people who've been infected with Mpox, as well as all the animals in their communities.
Even though we've had this virus with us, but because we probably didn't pay much attention to it, and so we didn't do much research. But right now, there's a lot going on.
One of the biggest issues in tackling Mpox on a global level is the fact that countries that have been hard hit for far longer than Canada or the US or anywhere in Europe, they don't have access to vaccines or treatments. So what I've been told is that we need more vaccine equity. We need to have more access throughout Africa to make sure that these viruses don't keep spreading in those areas and possibly beyond their borders. Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
We'll have a better sense of how the Canadian economy is doing when the latest GDP numbers are released tomorrow. But one unusual metric suggests it might not be a pretty picture. CBC's Paula Duhatschek explains the lipstick index and what cosmetic sales can tell us about the Canadian economy.
The cost of living may be high these days, but business at this Calgary Sephora is booming.
I don't like to admit it, but I come once a month.
I did notice that my ordinary stuff has gone up in price, but I have to do it for me.
The so-called lipstick index suggests when times are tough, people buy more cosmetics, a relatively affordable luxury. Some have disputed the idea, but a recent study from California State University found during the 2008 recession, makeup sales went up while clothing sales went down.
I would say it's been unprecedented.
Analytics firm Circana says Canadian beauty sales are up 18% ahead of the holiday season. That's on top of 24% growth last year.
Consumers today, they may be hesitant to invest in a higher priced item like a handbag or designer handbag or a designer pair of shoes, but they're still looking to have that spark of joy when they go shopping.
Those same analytics from Circana show in comparison to beauty, apparel sales are up only slightly this year, while footwear is trending down.
Here we have our derm wall.
Retailers are banking the beauty boom will help keep customers buying.
Our sales last year, they were record sales. This year, we're on track now to eclipse last year's sales.
And Shoppers Drug Mart owner Loblaw says beauty sales have been strong despite inflation.
And we would expect, that to remain the case for the foreseeable future.
Not everyone agrees. Circana says there may be a limit to what shoppers will spend even on affordable luxury. After 2 banner years, they're predicting a slowdown.
This is the serum.
Some shoppers are making changes.
I've minimized some of my skincare and my makeup routine for sure, but there still is certain products that I will go after because they make me feel good and they work well.
A way to save money that still feels like a splurge. Paula Duhatschek, CBC News, Calgary.
Well, there's a look at that freighter anchored to the middle of the Detroit River there. We've gotten through some chilly weather this week, but those temperatures go way up tomorrow. More weather coming up after the break. Frank the Tank has found his forever home. The giant tortoise was discovered wandering in a farmer's field last month in Richmond, BC. At first, it was touch and go whether Frank would even survive. But as Karen Larson reports, the story has a happy ending and proves slow and steady really does win the race.
Little nervous.
It's a big day for BC's best-known exotic tortoise.
Frank, what a good guy. Raring to go.
Frank the Tank is on the move, leaving the care of Maple Ridge SPCA, heading to his forever home at an undisclosed location somewhere in the province.
I'm feeling excited. It's been a long time coming. He's been in care for a little bit over a month and a half now, and we're just very excited that we're able to successfully get him into a fantastic home.
Frank might be excited too, but being a tortoise, it's hard to tell. Sulcata tortoises like Frank hail from the Sahara Desert, so it's no wonder that when he was found abandoned in a Richmond spinach field, he was in rough shape, having trouble breathing, suffering from shell rot. Mark Vosper with the BCSPCA fostered Frank back to health.
The first week, it was a little bit nerve-wracking. He came in, he had upper respiratory, he was really not well. He kind of led under the heat lamps, and he was just secreting liquid for those first few days. He'd been outside in the cold and the wet. He didn't want to eat anything the first few days.
Yeah, 16.9.
Frank is about 15 years old now, but could live to be 150 and could grow to be 5 times his current size, up to 90 kilos. Hence the tank part of his name. But being big and slow and not at all fluffy doesn't make him any less lovable.
He's a real character. He loves his food, he loves his tickles, and he follows you around as well. So it's like having a big stone dog.
Like all pets, Frank has some not so cute moments.
He likes to eat his own poop occasionally if you're not quick enough.
Frank's new family was chosen from hundreds of wannabe adoptees who applied when the story went international.
It's just been overwhelming with the amount of support and just people coming forward who want to know more about not only Frank the Tank, but Sulcata tortoises, and just see where he ends up in his journey.
At his new home, he'll have lots of room to roam and lots of places to dig, the favorite pastime of Sulcata tortoises like Frank the Tank. Karen Larson, CBC News, Maple Ridge.
Colette, there's something so satisfying about watching animals eat. The clip there where he was eating the cucumber, I couldn't get over that.
Yeah, and really satisfying to see such a good story, like things really turn around for him too. So yeah, really encouraged by that.
I was going to say that I want to pet Frank the Tank, but I also take that back because it sounds like he's going to outlive me. And I wouldn't like that, obviously.
We'll see about that. He likes tickles. Now, he likes some tickles there, Meg, so hopefully he'll be getting lots of those from his new home, wherever that might be. Let's talk about our weather at home and what might be coming our way. So our readings, -1. It's actually come up a little bit towards Toronto. It's freezing now over there. And milder air off to the west, which is moving in our direction. So the jet stream flow kind of pulling towards the Great Lakes. As it comes back to that flow, it's going to bring the next system our way, or just sort of we're on the line with it moving through. So we'll have some impact for sure, but it's also going to pull some of that milder air in our direction. So for now, -1, -2, what we're looking at, Goderich a little milder there because of that southwesterly flow coming in off the lake. The winds will be letting up. So yes, we still have wind chills to contend with, and we will through the overnight, but by tomorrow morning, that will be much less a factor. So the sustained winds, there you have it. Nice to see those backing off somewhat in some of the areas towards the snow belt where they really have been hammered with snow squalls over the last couple of days. Right now, most of that activity is around Parry Sound and Huntsville through that region, and east in the province over towards Kingston, where a winter weather travel advisory is still in place. And again, it has to do with that southwesterly flow where it's enhancing some of the snow that's falling there coming in off of Lake Ontario. As we move through the overnight hours into tomorrow morning, there will be some clouds around, but we're also going to see at least partial clearing and getting into some sunshine, kind of variable a little bit, but a good amount of sunshine I anticipate coming our way through the day on Thursday. When you couple that with the milder temperatures, it's looking pretty good, like likely the best day of the week in terms of my forecast, because we have some milder days, or at least one coming beyond that, but likely it'll be on the wet side too, and that's because of this next system that'll be rolling in. As it's tracking through, we should be pushed into the warm sector, and that's why it is a rain event. Other areas, if you will be traveling, will be looking late Friday into Saturday, getting into a bit of a mix, actually earlier Friday. Overnight tonight, like I said, this wind chill, don't worry too much about it unless you do need to be out. You're a shift worker or something, you'll be out in those overnight hours, because by morning, that's going to back off significantly. 9 degrees tomorrow with that sun when we get it. And then there it is, that next system Mostly rain because even the overnight lows are quite mild. It could mix a little bit at night, and then a chance even Saturday and Sunday. Not continuous, but still of having some active weather moving through.
I'm definitely going to have to pick a lighter coat for tomorrow. Thanks so much for that,
Yes, it's going to be a change up. Yeah.
Thank you. Ottawa has agreed to a $100 million deal with Google to keep news on its platform. We have the details on that coming up. The federal government has reached a multi-million-dollar deal with Google after months of the web giant threatening to pull Canadian news off its search engine. It's in response to a new law that requires major digital platforms to pay Canadian news outlets for linking to their content. Kate McKenna has the details.
After months of threats from Google to pull Canadian news content from the search engine, a deal.
This is a deal, an agreement that is going to resonate around the world as countries and democracies struggling with the same challenges that our media landscape in Canada is facing with are going to look at this, and we're very pleased we were there.
The federal government says Google will pay about $100 million per year to Canadian news organizations, a compensation for linking to original journalism. That's less than what the government wanted, but welcome news for an industry that needs those clicks.
Google creates our information environment. It sounds like I'm overstating this, but you want to know something, you put in a Google search.
This announcement comes after the government passed a new law forcing web giants to pay to link to Canadian news content.
I think the government was looking for some way to salvage what had been a real mess. There was, I think, some amount of desperation on the part of both the government and the industry to find some deal.
The government calls this deal a win. But Meta, the parent company of Instagram and Facebook, has already blocked Canadian news links from their platforms.
Unfortunately, Meta continues to completely abdicate any responsibility towards democratic institutions and even stability, but we're going to continue to work positively in those areas.
But there are still questions of how Google's money will be doled out and who will be eligible, including the CBC. The agreement allows Google to work directly with one group that will represent all media, but the details of how that will work won't be released until next month. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Ottawa.
Well, that's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. You can also download the CBC News app for stories that matter most to you. And don't forget to watch The National tonight at 9 on CBC News Network, 10 p.m. on the CBC News app, CBC TV, and streaming on CBC Gem and CBC Explore. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow night.